Thank you all for joining our monthly AMA today. Next week is Father's Day here in the United States. So happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. ABFT is co hosting today, and we have two awesome guests in the house, Brady and Goring. Both are co founders of Bonzo Finance, an open source, non custodial lending and borrowing protocol built on the Hedera network. So, welcome to our AMA, Brady and Goring.
Hey, thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it, and excited to get the chance to chat with the Saucerswap community.
Hey, glad to be here. Yeah.
Hey, Brady. Hey, Goring. Good to have you guys and Bonzo Finance in the house. Happy to have you with us. I've been outside today, and it's in Texas, and it's a scorcher. I'm hoping some of that heat kind of passes off into the crypto sphere. I think that HBAR has a bright future. You know, the most development going on in all the crypto space, and I'm in it for the tech. So let's get this going. Talk to me, Peter.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our June AMA, and a very warm welcome to Brady and Gring from Bonzo, who will be answering some questions about their upcoming lending protocol. So super excited to welcome them up here to talk about that. So in the past, some of you may know we've welcomed guests from projects like Headstarter and Citadel Wallet. So we are always excited to bring on builders in the space to talk about what they're building on Hedera. Before we do jump into the questions from this week, we want to take a moment to address just the overall sentiment and roadmap. We want to give everyone a sense of what's currently being worked on, what's coming next, and our overall strategy to grow Saucerswap. So first of all, we have made some great progress on governance, which will provide a core utility to the Sauce token. So, for those unaware, governance is the core and sometimes exclusive utility of many DEX tokens. This includes Uni of Uniswap. With the release of governance, everyone will be able to vote with their sauce on proposals that align initiatives, create farms and Larry campaigns, decide token classifications, and so on and so forth. We have governance working now on testnet and have created the UI for it. So we are looking at launching it early summer. So in the next few weeks, it could be towards the end of this month or it could go into next month, but it is coming up. Next, we get to work on some features after governance that we know have been highly anticipated, namely phase 2 and phase 3 of single-sided staking. We are super excited to follow through with these developments. We know that they've been a long time coming, and they can contribute to some greater utility, both for the XSauce token and then also the Plonk Epoch collectible NFTs via kind of their redemption for Sauceling NFTs. So after we roll out governance, we'll be able to lock in the product schema for these features and move forward with their development. So we are really excited about bringing phase 2 and phase 3 of single-sided staking online. Additionally, with Sauce having been listed on BitGet last month, we are looking forward to at least one more centralized exchange listing this month, with 2 being more likely. There is additionally a centralized exchange listing that is currently scheduled for July, which we are excited about as well. We also want to just quickly bring to your attention, we kicked off a major grant with the HBAR Foundation last week, providing over 20 million HBAR in incentives for liquidity providers. At the time of receipt, that was over $2 million USD in equivalent value for those tokens. And those tokens are being distributed right now to Saucerswap liquidity providers in both version 1 and version 2, and will be live for the next few months. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, feel free to do so on saucerswap.finance on the liquidity page. You'll see kind of the effect of those increased rewards. The salient point we do want to make in this introduction is we understand sentiment is lower today than it was a few months ago. We think this is kind of observed across DeFi on various networks, but The nature of these things is cyclical, and we want our users to know that we are still developing. We're shipping major features coming up with governance and more on the roadmap that I just mentioned, as well as some other integrations in the coming weeks. And looking back at the previous month, we think we had some major wins. We had this grant announcement with 20 million HBAR, a major listing on BitGet, a MoonPay integration that's been in the works for a few weeks, not to mention the work that we have accomplished behind the scenes. So there's a lot to be excited about moving forward, and we are very appreciative of all of your support as we continue to grow Saucerswap. And I will just mention as well, the project depends on our community as much as it depends on development. So I would like to encourage everyone to stay positive. There's a lot to look forward to. We're working hard, and remember that we have a well-defined roadmap, and we've consistently shipped features on that roadmap since the launch of Saucerswap version 1 almost 2 years ago. And we have a clear plan going forward as well to scale. And as we scale, the ecosystem has some exciting developments as well. So this is, kind of the feature of this AMA. We have Bonzo here, so lending and borrowing going live. It's of course, a DeFi primitive that has an established symbiotic relationship with DEXs on other networks. It's a proven model, so we're excited to see projects like Bonzo and others coming online soon. There's a few lending and borrowing. I think Liquidity is already live. They created a pool on Saucerswap, and Bonzo's coming right up as well. And I think Sirio is another one. But anyway, all of these developments can bring a lot more awareness and activity to Hedera DeFi. So with that preamble out of the way, we can get into the questions for this week.
Thank you so much, Peter. Hedera DeFi, here we come. So the first question is from Rocco. With this environment being highly competitive, any project is required to have excellent marketing in order to succeed, regardless of how its tech is. What is Saucerswap's long-term plan to gain popularity and create brand awareness, especially to people outside of the Hedera ecosystem? As of my observations, current incentives don't reach far out of Hedera or Saucerswap's community. So, for example, onboarding influential social media figures to talk about Saucerswap, purchasing ad space or other collaborations in order to reach people that aren't already in the Hedera ecosystem. As of now, the average crypto enthusiast does not know of Saucerswap's existence. What are your thoughts on that, Peter?
Yeah, Rocco, thanks for the question. So this kind of goes back to our overall marketing approach. And in general, it's always been to be objective and honest about the development of the platform. Creating brand awareness is a tricky thing. And our philosophy is that it's linked to earning brand integrity. And in our view, this comes from following through and executing on development. So in Web3, you see a lot of marketing that focuses on hype and speculation. And in the short term, that works. Our approach is different. We think that a long-term, more sustainable approach that builds trust is better. And it's not to say that we don't want visibility, especially to people outside the Hedera ecosystem. Quite the opposite. That's one of our main goals, is to expand. The challenge is accessibility. So right now, there's one bridge to and from Hedera that not many people outside of Hedera know about. There is limited access to Hedera native USDC on centralized exchanges. The Hedera token service has not been integrated full stop on many centralized exchanges. These are substantial barriers to entry that do make any marketing endeavors to users from other networks not impossible, but definitely more challenging. The silver lining to all of that is that all of these problems are being actively addressed. And when they are addressed, I think it's reasonable to expect the door to Hedera to open. And because it will be so much easier to get involved by having easier access to native USDC, for example, or being able to use, the bridge that users are familiar with and trust, they will have less friction to get involved with Hedera and, participate in the various network offerings. So To sum up our point of view, we think our marketing approach to date has been effective with a kind of high of reaching the top 25 DEXs across all networks by TVL, despite the accessibility challenges I mentioned before, and despite the lack of institutional capital on Hedera. So that is a massive achievement, and we're not trying to rest on our laurels. I think it's just a good barometer of what we've achieved together. We surpassed Camelot, SpookySwap, QuickSwap, Bancor, MinSwap, which is the leading DEX on Cardano, Loopring, and other very prominent DEXs, some of which had TVLs in excess of $1 billion last cycle. So this growth we observed was not achieved by hiring influencers to create urgency or a sense of hype, but just by being consistent and working hard and delivering on our roadmap. That strategy has been successful for the growth of Saucerswap to date, and that is our strategy going forward.
That was a great question, Rocco, and Peter, you nailed it on the head. I couldn't agree more. Next question is for Bonzo Finance. Are there any plans to integrate Saucerswap's API with Bonzo to enable collateral swaps directly from within the Bonzo Finance interface?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, and the answer is absolutely yes. But not immediately. We might be doing that in Q3 of this year. So what we are focusing on right now is, as you know, Bonzo has a public testnet live right now, which has the basic features like borrowing, lending, repaying, withdrawing, and all these things, right? And we also have flash loans working right now on the testnet. So what we are planning essentially is our current main focus is to launch on the mainnet, the Hedera mainnet, with a basic set of features. These will include flash loans, liquidation bots, all the borrowing, lending, basic features of any lending protocol. And immediately after that, we want to launch the collateral swaps because I and like our team has been using lending protocols personally, and I think collateral swaps or even debt swaps is a really nice feature. So if you see that, the APY for some token is more than the APY that you have supplied, for the token that you have supplied, you can immediately switch that token without, going through the whole process of withdrawing and supplying again. So yeah, it's definitely on the roadmap, and that will be one of the first features that we tackle after launching on the mainnet.
Yeah, and just
Great.
to add to that as
Oh,
well,
sorry.
so Bonzo Finance is it's based on the Aave v2 code base, and so the functionalities that you're seeing on Aave v2 are all part of the roadmap, and I think we're taking a similar approach as Saucerswap when it comes to sort of laying a really solid and robust foundation initially. They had started with Uniswap v2 and then evolved feature sets and product offerings and eventually adopted Uniswap v3. And we're taking a very similar approach, and it's sort of phased, but we want to deliver a really solid and usable product right off the bat, utilizing Aave v2 and sort of its core functionalities.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Brady and Gring. The Bonzo testnet is found on bonzo.finance, so feel free to check that out, guys. So our next question is from a anonymous user. When is Sauce going to be listed on another central exchange? To get a Bybit listing, you need to have 40 million market cap. Saucerswap has 50 plus million market cap. Why is Saucerswap not on Bybit? And another question is, did the team also apply for Binance after the recent announcement? What are your thoughts, Peter?
Yeah, thanks for this question. So as I mentioned in the introduction to this AMA, we are planning for at least one centralized exchange listing this month, with two potentially being on the horizon. We can't speak on kind of specific exchanges or the exact scheduling right now, but we are satisfied with the progress we have been making, and we're looking forward to the coming weeks. I will just also note that so newer projects like Pack from the Hashpack team tend to get listed faster or precede the scheduling in terms of listing of other network tokens. Just being a newer project, this is kind of what centralized exchanges want to capitalize on, and it's great for the ecosystem. It's been really good for us, and it means that HTS is integrated on exchanges. There's more precedent for it, and so more token listings can follow. And we have been working with Hashpack to achieve the goal for the, to the benefit of the entire HTS ecosystem, to have HTS more widely integrated on centralized exchanges. And that, of course, kind of culminated in the BitGet listing last month with Pack and Sauce.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Thanks for that explanation there, Peter. Septia, hello, Septia. How are you? Septia wants to know what risk controls will Bonzo Finance have in place to minimize liquidity crunches?
Yeah, it's a great question. Happy to take that one. So there's a few things that we're doing to try and minimize that risk. The first one, which is foundational to Aave, is that when you're participating in lending and borrowing, it is an over collateralized position that you're providing. So when you supply assets to the protocol, you are only allowed to borrow a percentage of the value that is supplied, and the percentage is different per asset. So, based on risk parameters and a risk analysis for each asset that's supported, that over collateralization amount is going to change. Essentially, the loan to value amount will change. So when users are sort of over collateralizing this, there's a buffer that exists for those assets. And then in addition, dynamic interest rates. So, the interest rates for borrowing adjust based on the utilization of that particular asset. So, as more of an asset is borrowed, the interest rate for that asset increases, and that incentivizes the behavior of repaying, and also sort of encouraging liquidity to return to the protocol. Goring, anything else there that I may have missed?
Yeah, so I just want to give an example of the Aave market on the Scroll network. So Scroll is another L2 on Ethereum. So it actually happened, I think on Thursday or Friday this week. So, on the Aave protocol, there's a concept called utilization rate. So essentially, it's the ratio of borrowed assets against supplied assets. So let's say you like all the people on the network have supplied 10,000 USDC, and all the people have borrowed I don't know 9,000 USDC. So in that case, the utilization rate is going to be 90%. So as Brady was saying, as the utilization rate goes on increasing, the interest rate goes very high. So on Scroll, what happened last week was, this week actually, was that the USDC utilization rate was at 99%. And because of that, the borrow and the supply APY on that particular asset was very high. So it was going towards like 80% or something for the supply. And what happens is with the market dynamics, whenever the APY goes so high, there are more people in the market who are supplying that asset. So it's kind of like an equilibrium, and it's a game theoretical problem. So what we have observed in the Aave protocol in the past is that the market dynamics kind of help with this. That's number one. And we are also looking at we are also looking at implementing something called as borrow caps from Aave v3. We might bring in that functionality in Aave v2 now. Not sure whether we will be doing it, but we are trying to do it before the mainnet launch. With the borrow caps, we can actually cap the utilization of any asset. So we could cap it at, let's say, 90% or 85% or something. Yeah, these are like a couple of things that we are looking at.
Yeah, and then to add, in addition to that, there is a mechanism within Aave that is also being employed in Bonzo called a safety module. And essentially, a safety module is a reserve of the protocol's native asset, holders of that native asset are incentivized to lock up their tokens into this safety module and receive a interest rate, an APY, for doing so. That reserve can be employed in the case of a shortfall event related to liquidity. So if there's moments of extreme volatility for supported assets and liquidations don't take place in a timely manner or take place improperly, that reserve is also employed to ensure that creditors are made whole. So anticipation is that we are doing everything to mitigate the chance of that from happening, but it is sort of an insurance in the case of something like that taking place. And then, if it is employed, the assets that are utilized from the safety module, it's shared across anybody who is participating in that functionality.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Brady and Garang. So moving on to our next question. This is from a anonymous user. Saucerswap Twitter is not very active recently, and the number of followers is stagnating, which seems to indicate a lack of interest. Any plans to boost engagement and dy- dynamism, dynamism, sorry guys, in the coming weeks?
Yeah, well, Bonzo's surely getting the fun questions. So Saucerswap's Twitter account has grown by 3,400 followers in the last 30 days, which indicates roughly a 10% increase month over month. That is an excellent growth rate. And over the next few weeks, we have several developments and integrations that we will announce and highlight on our social media platforms, including Twitter. So in terms of recent growth, we have enjoyed a healthy rate of increase. Again, 10% month over month is very good. Going back to the answer from before regarding our marketing approach, we use our social media accounts to put out useful information about integrations and protocol developments so that all the content we put out is, it's not just fluff. We want to put out substance. Additionally, the spring incentives campaign does present a unique opportunity for marketing. Looking into potentially doing a press release for this one to kind of target users from other networks. So highlighting that as an endeavor is something we're currently pursuing.
Sounds pretty good, Peter. Thank you for that. Next question is again for the Bonzo crew. Are there any integrations that will exist between Saucerswap DEX and Bonzo Finance Lending Protocol?
Yeah, we're definitely looking into integrations between the two. I think the first thing off the bat is there are two core functionalities within the Bonzo Finance ecosystem for liquidation bots and flash loans that Goring mentioned earlier. And so for liquidation bots, essentially what that is anybody in the ecosystem who is technically savvy can operate a liquidation bot that seeks out opportunities for liquidations, essentially when liquidation thresholds are met for users. And upon performing a liquidation, they would take the collateral that was supplied by the user, and swaps would need to be performed as part of that process. And when we are building out the templates for liquidation bots in that ecosystem, it is going to heavily rely on Saucerswap and their DEX and the liquidity in Saucerswap to perform that action. So one thing I'm excited about that in the sense that I think that by adding lending protocols and particularly Bonzo Finance and our liquidation bot ecosystem, it should help further drive volumes that we see on the Saucerswap DEX, which is a key health metric. And then in addition to that, with flash loans are essentially the ability to borrow assets from the Bonzo protocol without providing collateral. And the way that works is it's the development of a smart contract that borrows assets or liquidity from the protocol, utilizes that liquidity for certain types of financial transactions. So it could be arbitrage between two decentralized exchanges or between a centralized and a decentralized exchange, and then paying back that loan plus interest, all within a single transaction. And if the loan is unable to be repaid back within that single transaction, the process reverses. And so it's as if, that process never happened. So flash loans are viewed as a very, relatively safe way to be able to utilize larger amounts of liquidity in the protocol and earn a profit for doing so based on the various types of activities that would utilize, you would utilize that liquidity for. In the templates, again, that we're building out for our developer ecosystem, that includes Saucerswap as sort of a key exchange that someone would utilize when participating in a flash loan type activities. And Goring, anything else there to add in addition with regards to integrations?
Yeah, so we mentioned the collateral swaps earlier, so that will be another integration. And also, we are heavily relying on the WH-bar, the wrapped H-bar contracts kind of deployed by Saucerswap. So, for us, like I think for any blockchain protocol, composability is very important, right? So it's very important to work with, it's very important to be able to work with essentially all the contracts and all the things that have already been deployed on the network. And that's why we are integrating with the WH-bar contract deployed by Saucerswap. That way, there's a very close tie and close relationship between Bonzo and Saucerswap. Anyone who is kind of building liquidation bots on Bonzo or utilizing the flash loans on Bonzo will be able to use Saucerswap very seamlessly. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Brady and Garang. So this next question is from a user, and you guys kind of touched on this a little bit. For liquidation bots on bonds and finance, will there be mechanisms in place to utilize Saucerswap's liquidity to facilitate the liquidation process efficiently?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say it's like the keystone for any liquidation bot on Monzo. So without Saucerswap's liquidity, the liquidation bots and the flash loans won't really work. So just to kind of explain in short how the liquidations work, let's say I have supplied some token, like I have deposited some token on Bonzo, a token like, I don't know, Karate or Dovu or Sauce token itself, right? And I have borrowed USDC against those tokens. Now, let's say what happens is just like what happened yesterday, the token goes down by the supplied token value. It goes down by 20% because of some events in the market that happened yesterday, for example. Now, what happens is in this case, my loan to value ratio, my LTV, could go above the liquidation threshold. And in this case, the liquidation bots will kick in. So what the liquidation bots will do is they will repay my USDC loan by taking a flash loan, right? So they'll take a flash loan, they'll repay my USDC. They will swap my USDC on Saucerswap back to Sauce, and then they will essentially pay back the flash loan on Bonzo. So all these actions will happen in the same block, in the same transaction on the blockchain. Not the same transaction, but in the same block on the blockchain. And that's why, yeah, without Saucerswap, liquidation bots might not work unless you have like a big liquidity in your own wallet. Unless you have like tens of thousands or even millions of dollars in your wallet, it won't work. Yeah.
Awesome, Garang. Thank you so much for that. Next question goes to Joseph. What cross-chain activities will the team be participating in over the next 6 months to encourage new users to come to Saucerswap?
Hi, everyone. Man, I feel like a second-class citizen being this far down. But yeah, to answer the question, there are several interoperability solutions currently integrating with Hedera. So I believe Axelar has been the first to publicly announce this. And once integrated, there will be more avenues to bridge assets to and from Hedera and other chains. So Saucerswap plans on leveraging this by allocating a portion of the 23 million plus HBAR in THF grant money towards liquidity incentives in both V1 and V2 pools. And these would be pools containing these newly supported cross-chain assets with an emphasis on stablecoins. Protocols like Axelar will also enable cross-chain swaps in addition to the standard bridge transactions. And this means you can access, say, Uniswap liquidity from within the Saucerswap front end. Beyond this, we are continuing to assist with the onboarding of new active liquidity management or ALM providers, such as Gamma and Steer Protocol. These offer an alternative liquidity management strategy to Ichi. So ALMs, of course, are important for the health of Saucerswap V2, since concentrated liquidity positions can be a challenge to manage without the auto rebalancing. And lastly, I think it would be great for multi-chain yield aggregators like Beefy to integrate with Hedera. This would enable V1 yield farmers and potentially V2 liquidity providers to automatically compound their earnings without the need to do like a manual harvest.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Joseph. You're A1 in my book, friend. So the next question is from an anonymous user. Development seems relatively slow recently. Are you facing particular challenges such as technical, staffing, or other? When can we expect the release of the features in development visible on the roadmap? For example, improved Lari analytics, slippage optimization, wallet connect integration, etc.
Yeah, good question. So development is fairly cyclical, meaning we generally spend several months with our heads down working on a new product or feature. Then once it's ready to ship, we allocate more resources to marketing and just become more public facing in general. So you may have noticed this pattern with single-sided staking, Saucerswap version 2, and most recently auto pools. And the product that we're currently working on is on-chain governance. Also, as our protocol continues to mature, the length of these development cycles tends to increase as considerations like scaling and stability become more pertinent. And this has become especially apparent in recent times, given that we experienced a 10x increase in traffic near the beginning of the year. There's also external considerations that are outside of our control. So for example, we are unable to release Wallet Connect despite completing our integration. This is due to several outstanding differences between Hedera wallet providers, which are currently being resolved. So all to say, we unfortunately can't move with the same cadence as we did at the beginning of our project's lifecycle. However, we are taking proactive measures such as hiring more developers and ensuring tech debt is minimized and we have a solid foundation on which to build. I do agree that frequent communication on the status of our development is important. And the hyper-competitiveness of this space is acknowledged. So we will put out a development update this week, and this should bring the community up to speed on what has been achieved and what can be expected in the near term.
Thank you, Joseph. Next question is, what is the plan to deepen liquidity in Bonzo and also the Hedera DeFi ecosystem as a whole? And then a follow-up question is, a sex partnership like Joe Cake or JUP coming up?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that's really top of mind for us. At the end of the day, in order to create an economically sustainable protocol, we need to have TVL on Bonzo, and then we need to, ensure that folks are utilizing that TVL for borrowing. That's where majority of the fees come from for the treasury for Bonzo Finance, and there's sort of three key things that we're looking at off the bat that seem critical, and it's the incentivization of liquidity providers, offering a wide range of assets that are supported by the protocol, and then leveraging stablecoins and in particular USDC. With the incentivization of liquidity providers, there are two programs that we're looking at running. The first one is we are in discussions with HBAR Foundation around liquidity incentives for their DeFi Spring program that Saucerswap is also partaking in. Those discussions aren't finalized yet, but the hope is to be able to provide HBAR incentives for folks that are both supplying liquidity and borrowing. And then the second is a points program that's being employed by the protocol. So we're actually going to be using the HCS 20 points standard using the Hedera consensus service for the protocol. I think it's one of the first times that in the Hedera ecosystem, there's been an employment of this HCS 20 standard for like a real world live use case. I think the only other one might be NFTier. That points program, we were inspired by MarginFi and Camino and some of these other lending protocols that you see on networks like Solana and across the Web3 space. And it's going to run in seasons. So each season is around 5 to 6 months. And points that are accumulated throughout those seasons for participating in supplying liquidity and borrowing, users will receive rewards at the end of each season for the accumulation of those points. And so we think between those two incentive models, it's a sort of strong case for folks to want to be able to supply liquidity to the protocol. In addition, and sort of tangential to that, there's a lot of liquidity in the ecosystem today that is in the treasuries of these token-based projects or in large holders accounts, sometimes employees or investors or folks that have are large holders of these token-based projects. And there hasn't been a extremely safe place for them to supply that liquidity, which unlocks it for the ecosystem. That's more sort of relatively lower risk, where they're able to earn rewards on it. And so with Bonzo, because when you support a specific asset, it's a single liquidity pool. It's not like a token pair similar to like a DEX. And in discussions that we've had with token-based projects, looking to them as potentially unlocking some of that liquidity that is in their treasuries, or by these large holders that for many reasons they're unable to sell their tokens on market, but they do want to utilize them. Bonzo is a very appealing place to be able to supply those assets. In addition to that, so in terms of a wide range of assets, one of the things that I'm most excited about that's sort of in the process of being developed is bridging infrastructure, and in particular the engagement with Axelar. I think one of the few ways that we can really drive overall TVL in the ecosystem is through the use of bridging and providing incentives for users to drive liquidity from other networks to Hedera. And so, we are in the process of waiting for Axelar bridging and bridge providers that are utilizing Axelar to come online. But those wrapped assets that can be brought over are going to play a critical role in like the growth and health of Hedera's DeFi ecosystem, and in particular protocols like Saucerswap and Bonzo Finance. And we certainly want to run campaigns that target users on other networks and bring them and liquidity over to the Hedera network. But again, just waiting on the development of this bridging infrastructure to take place. But it feels very promising. And then the third thing is stablecoins. There's a huge emphasis on USDC right now in the Hedera ecosystem, as part of HBAR Foundation's strategy, and I think just overarching strategy. the liquidity of USDC on Hedera is quite low relative to other public networks. And so, as Goring mentioned earlier, USDC and stablecoins on lending protocols are one of, if not the most highest utilized asset. And we think that's going to hold true for the Hedera ecosystem. And so, in our discussions with market makers and liquidity providers and other folks that would be supplying that liquidity, USDC is definitely top of mind. And we want to be a liquidity powerhouse when it comes to USDC and other stablecoin assets.
Thank you so much for that thorough explanation, Brady. So our next question is from Maurice. Is there any consideration to use the Python network for better auto pulls?
Yes, so our team actually has met with Pith, and we do see value in an integration. In terms of auto pools, I know that Ichi uses Chainlink's transaction manager to streamline the rebalance function. So this is done by quickly identifying and confirming transactions during periods of heavy network congestion. I don't think that's particularly relevant to Hedera, just due to architectural differences between Hashgraph and blockchain. But in terms of price oracles, Ichi currently looks at Saucerswap TWAP oracles, and these price assets based on token reserves and liquidity pools. So I'm not sure if they would how they would use third-party oracles, such as those offered by Pith. But if you have any ideas, feel free to drop them in our Discord.
You pronounce it Pith? I thought it was P-yith. Anyway, next question is, when is stage 2 and 3 of single-sided staking going to launch? And what are the use cases for the PEC NFTs?
Yeah, so Peter touched on this, but stages 2 and 3 of single-sided staking will be prioritized following the release of on-chain governance, and this is planned for early summer. Our conception of how phases 2 and 3 will work has evolved since it was first announced, and we now have a better sense of how an optimal system can be developed that has product market fit within the Hedera ecosystem. So you can expect marketing and educational material on this extension of single-sided staking to become a focus once token-weighted voting and a functioning DAO are live. In terms of how Plonky Pot collectible NFTs relate to stage 3 of single-sided staking, the idea is that holders of these NFTs will have the option of redeeming them for Sauceling NFTs, and these Sauceling NFTs in turn can be staked to increase one's weight of rewards in a community pool.
Thank you for that, Joseph. So this next question is for Brady and Goring. Can developers or traders use Bonzo Finance's flash loans to execute complex arbitrage trades or liquidity provision strategies on Saucerswap?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as mentioned before, flash loans can be employed to be able to perform these arbitrage activities, and the templates that we're creating for users who are creating flash loans automatically incorporate Saucerswap's DEX as part of that. And the way that process might look is, a trader identifies that there's a price discrepancy between an asset that's on Saucerswap and maybe another decentralized exchange or centralized exchange. They configure a flash loan where the trader is able to borrow the necessary funds to be able to execute this arbitrage trade that they want to perform. All within the same single transaction, the trader would sell the borrowed assets on the exchange with the higher price, and then buy them back on Saucerswap at a lower price, as an example. And then finally, the trader repays the flash loan using the profits from the arbitrage trade, and then keeping the remaining profits for themselves. And so this is sort of one example that flash loans can be utilized for. And then, in terms of liquidity provisioning, yes, you can borrow assets against your collateral on Bonzo, and then you really can do anything that you want with those assets that you've borrowed. So, one of the things that I could anticipate seeing is there are various APY rates on Saucerswap for providing liquidity based on these different asset types. And let's say you're a large holder of HBAR, but you want to be able to get exposure to these other assets to supply them as liquidity and earn interest or earn rewards for doing so. But you don't want to sell your HBAR in order to do that. So you can collateralize your HBAR using Bonzo. You can take out a loan of, let's say, USDC, because USDC interest APY on Saucerswap is pretty high. And then there is a small borrow APY that you would pay for borrowing the USDC from Bonzo, but you would supply that to Saucerswap, and you'd be earning a ideally larger APY for supplying it as liquidity to the protocol. That is one strategy where liquidity provisioning can take place, where it utilizes Bonzo and it utilizes Saucerswap, and that's going to help deepen the liquidity and for assets on Saucerswap's DEX, but then also create more sort of efficient market. So, with greater liquidity in Saucerswap's DEX, there's a less likely chance of slippage and other benefits that come along with that, as well as efficiencies.
Awesome, Brady. I appreciate all that information. That's really fascinating stuff. This is where we break away from the traditional AMA and move on to the TMS, because this isn't a question. This is tell me something. So Anon wants to tell us, I think it's appropriate to use AI technologies to be more inclusive of non-English speaking communities and not be attacked with so many questions afterwards. Joseph, you want to tell him something back?
Sure, I'll take a stab. Yeah, so we actually did leverage AI to translate our Gitbook documentation into, I believe, 11 different languages. I do think there's also value in translating the AMA transcripts, so I appreciate this suggestion. Slightly unrelated, but adding localization and multi-currency support to the web app would also increase Saucerswap's accessibility to non-English speakers. I'm not sure if automating this with AI is necessarily the right approach, as we'd want to ensure the translations are accurate. But in any case, we definitely plan on looking into this once current roadmap items are completed.
Yeah, I for one, I'm embracing the AI technology. I think it's fascinating. And you guys seen Nvidia's market cap? It's insane. It's like over $3 trillion. AI is really driving their stock prices to the moon, and I'm behind the whole movement. So hello, future. All right, let's hear some parting words from Brady and Pineapple before we close this session out. Did we miss anything today, Brady?
No, really appreciate you guys having us on, and us being able to speak to the community a little bit about Bonzo Finance, and our testnet instance of Bonzo is live right now, so you can go and test that out at testnet.bonzo.finance. We're also hosting a NFT collectibles sale on Headstarter. That is taking place on June 17th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. There is an allow list sale at that time that runs for 3 hours, and then a public sale thereafter for up to 7 days or until the NFTs are sold out. Definitely recommend if you are interested in these collectibles and participating in the Bonzo ecosystem, jumping into that allow list. So essentially joining the Bonzo Finance Discord at bonzo.finance/Discord. There's instructions on how to get an allow list spot for that sale. And then quickly diving into sort of the utility of the NFTs. it's two very key things. The first is again, there's a point system that's employed for the protocol, and if you are holding an NFT, there's a points multiplier that is applied. So based on the tier of NFT, it's a larger multiplier. And then the ability to claim up to a certain number of Bonzo native protocol governance tokens based on the tier again. And then, we're always available to help answer any questions about Bonzo Finance and the protocol. And we're really focused on education for the community. It's a very new financial functionality that's been being made available for the ecosystem and for users. And sort of taking the Saucerswap playbook from the early days when they first launched, we really want to make sure that folks understand the capabilities of the protocol and how to use it. And we're always here to help answer questions for anybody who's interested.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Brady. And thank you guys for joining us today. I'm super excited for the lending and borrowing protocols that are being built on Hedera. I've tried Bonzo's testnet, and it was really easy and simple to use. I wish you guys a seamless and successful launch. Before we end today's AMA, the team would like to award a dog star to a community member who has been helping promote the Hedera ecosystem and the Saucerswap community. So congratulations to Kay Zuick. Thank you so much for your contributions. Please submit a support ticket to claim your sauce tokens. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, just want to say thank you to Brady and Grang for joining us in this AMA. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your weekend. We are looking forward, as Joseph mentioned, to sharing a development update with all of you next week. We think June is going to be a great month for Hedera. Let's stay positive and welcome new users with positivity, especially with the ongoing Spring Incentives campaign. There is a lot to look forward to. We're going to continue to work hard to scale Saucerswap and Hedera DeFi. So with that, take care, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Thanks so much, guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.